Holy cow, is there a lot going on tonight.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
So we're going to take a look at the online gaming growth and the developments there, and once again at least get a constructive warning, I'm guessing, from our guest about the challenges that it brings, never mind the constitutionality of it. So stay tuned for that. But obviously it's a very, very busy news day, so let's get going on this Wednesday evening. Headline at press time. We record our program in the early afternoon, so I had to step away from following this stuff, but this was the beginning. Well, sort of the beginning. The beginning of the hearing with Michael Cohen in front of House Oversight was about Republicans protesting that the hearing was actually taking place because they feel like they got a document dump inside the deadline for, or past the deadline for document dumps. So that started the tone, and then Michael Cohen took to the microphone.
I am ashamed of my weakness and my misplaced loyalty, of the things I did for Mr. Trump in an effort to protect and promote him. I am ashamed that I chose to take part in concealing Mr. Trump's illicit acts rather than listening to my own conscience. I am ashamed because I know what Mr. Trump is. He is a racist, he is a con man, and he is a cheat.
I have to tell you, I was in a pseudo-fetal position listening to that. We knew he was going to say something like that, and some media outlets had the script anyway. I would have hoped that that kind of impression would have been a soft sell rather than in front, because in many ways it set the partisan tone into even a different oblivion. I've never seen, and we've seen a lot of partisan hearings, I've never seen such a partisan tone. Republicans doing nothing exclusively, at least up until the time that I saw at midday, doing nothing but beating the tar out of Cohen for his credibility as a liar, as a liar, as a liar, as a convicted liar, as a felon, as a liar, as a liar. That's it. That's just over and over and over again. No substance whatsoever. Democrats defending his being there, some substance, a couple of interesting investigative gotcha questions I don't have time to get into tonight. We will tomorrow. But really, the other thing is, honestly, I think Oversight could have taken a look at this and said, you know what, the president went to Korea, or Vietnam to speak to Kim Jong-un. We will postpone the hearing until he comes back. Just in the spirit of America being able to not have a split screen, you know, and out of respect for the president's work overseas. Now, there's not a lot of respect going on in the world, period, and certainly in Washington, but I think they could have done well to do that. In the meantime, on the summit itself, who knows what Donald Trump is going to come up with. Here's a little bit.
Well, I wanted to just say it's an honor to be with Chairman Kim. It's an honor to be together in really a country, Vietnam, where they've really rolled out the red carpet, and they're very honored to have us. And it's great to be with you. We had a very successful first summit. I felt it was very successful. Hopefully we'll be equal or greater than the first. And we made a lot of progress, and I think the biggest progress was our relationship is really a good one.
You know, I just don't, I know we've been kind of awash in Trump in news cycles continually, but are you missing the not so subtleties of that, the honor? Do we understand who this guy is? And do you have any misgivings about what deals are going to develop from the layout of honor and respect for a guy who behaves as he does and a regime that has the history that it has? Do we only gain by rubbing Kim's belly? I don't get this. I just don't get it at all. We need more and more expertise on this. In the meantime, we had this thing, and so we'll know tomorrow more or less what's happening. Of course, the president says he's going to spend his overnight watching the hearing because he's 12 hours ahead. Mr. President, get some sleep, stay focused. We'll give you the highlights. In the meantime, little meltdown at the State House last night. This was classic. We got a headline on this. So State Representative Joe Almeida, from time to time in his career, has riffed, just gone to places where no man has gone before. And reportedly, he is doing a little riffing on Black History Month over the course of this month. Last night, he had an opportunity to say some things about somebody who had passed. And the comments are supposed to be about someone who has passed. Instead, he began to kind of riff. And Charlene Lima, the state representative from Cranston, who was sitting in for the Speaker of the House, wasn't having any of it. Not on the contents, but on the Roberts rules. And then it got, well, ugly. Here's some edits.
Representative Almeida, I love you. Sit down, Representative Hull. Representative Hull, you're out of order. Sit down. Representative Hull, I will not allow you to disrupt this floor. Sit down. Representative Hull, if you keep disrupting this House, I will ask the sheriff to take you off the floor until you can comport yourself.
Please do not disrespect the community of color. I'm in Black History Month at this time in this chamber, now or ever, ever again.
I'm taking over. Come on.
Makes you look bad.
I don't know if you heard Char right there kind of telling the Speaker, you're making me look bad. It's true. Everybody gets a demerit in this situation. Joe Almeida taking a liberty without suggesting that he wanted to put a resolution up to talk about his story on Black History Month, which had to do with history's poor depiction of the Lone Ranger, who, according to Joe and history, was actually black, like the real-life Lone Ranger. Secondly, Charlene Lima should have let him go. You got to know that the tone and the tenor with race issues in this country today, Joe's an old player in the State House. You know he riffs. Let him go, right? She didn't. She meant well. I don't think she meant any harm. Thirdly, Ray Hall, the state representative who is African American, way out of order. The response nowhere near what the crime was, so to speak. And then, of course, Anastasia Williams with the Eva, showing no respect to the chair whatsoever, as if this was her moment to shout down the woman in this particular case. And then the Speaker jumping in and tossing at his female Speaker pro tem, making her look like she couldn't handle the situation. Everybody gets a 15-yard penalty for unsportsmanlike conduct, and that is my ruling, and I shall hear no more of it. I'm sure, you know, if we don't have Michael Cohen today, talk radio is going nuts on it. I'm sure it frustrated a lot of hosts. That's all I would have said about it and moved on. But anyway, that's pretty good, don't you think? Okay, here's the headline on our conversation of the day. Of course, I think I'll switch gears and ask Patrick Kelly what he thinks of Michael Cohen and the riff last night. The heck with your stuff. I mean, how are you doing, my friend? Nice to see you.
Doing great.
Professor of accounting, but a researcher on this gambling issue, and has done his own riffing on this, and I think responsible riffing on the gaming issue. So once upon a time, we decided that we were going to get into sports gaming a long, long time ago, within the last year. You warned about some of the things that we should be thinking about. While you didn't come down and condemn it,
Nope.
You don't do that.
Nope.
You just kind of supply everybody with the right info. And now, because I think of a combination of the frustration of the operational startup at Twin River, meaning crowds, and just the competitive issues out there, we are jumping right to what is a kind of a form of online gaming. It's not pure online gaming. It's handheld and desktop device gaming to assist people so that once they've registered at Twin River,
Right.
they don't have to go back.
Right.
That's what is now on the floor.
Right.
Give me your 30-second summary, then we're going to dig in. What do you think about this?
It's not surprising that Rhode Island is proceeding down this path. And the similarities I see between sports betting moving to a mobile platform and what's happened with casinos are striking. Rhode Island wants to be the first to market, if you will, and have this, and what they would like to do is have people from Massachusetts and Connecticut come to Rhode Island and engage in sports betting. That's what happened with casinos when only Connecticut had them. Everybody else is, okay, we need to kind of get into this business, and that's what's going to happen. You may end up with a situation where there's mobile sports betting. I'm concerned about that because I think it really makes it too easy for people to gamble. And you don't have maybe the controls. If you go and engage in sports betting at Twin River, you've got signs, hey, if you got a problem, check in here, we can help you. On your phone, where's that?
All right, this is where a lot of your research has been. When we come back, Professor Kelly will talk about what he knows about accessibility, what it can do, and we'll remind you as to how this story has progressed. Stay with us. So let me remind you what we're talking about here.
And the act passes.
The Rhode Island Senate overwhelmingly approving legislation to expand legal sports betting to the online market. Rhode Island became the first New England state to legalize sports betting last year, in person only at Twin Rivers' 2 casinos. But Senate President Dominic Ruggiero says he wants it to be more easily accessible.
I think there's going to be a lot of people who support online gaming because I think it'll be more convenient for them.
I suspect that there may end up being a legal challenge on this.
Senator Donna Nesselbush says she supports online gaming and she voted for the bill, but questioned whether this needs to go to the voters, since Rhode Island's constitution requires a referendum to expand types of gaming.
I think smart minds could read the law and the requirements both ways. And because of that, I do think that someday it wouldn't surprise me if the Supreme Court weighs in on it.
It's really not an expansion of sports betting. It's just a different method of wagering.
What's the harm in asking the voters?
Senator Sam Bell voted against the bill, saying he would support a voter referendum and a more competitive marketplace instead of limiting mobile betting to be operated out of Twin River Casino.
By passing this law, we would be giving a monopoly on online sports gambling to an existing business, Twin River.
Now, I think they're all interesting arguments. First of all, just so you understand where I am, I'm okay with sports gambling. I've made a couple of wagers since Twin River opened. I have been paid to read commercial copy on the radio about it. I don't have a philosophical problem with it, but I let Twin River and the lottery know that I'm still going to do a fair analysis on the process here. And so we've got raised here constitutional questions on the original decision to go into sports gaming, period.
Yep.
Now the expansion of platform,
right,
at least, right? The idea that somebody may challenge that constitutionally, maybe, and then this notion of monopoly is an interesting fourth discussion. All of those things I'm sure you've got a take on. But you're really researched on the problem gaming here.
Yes.
So the fifth issue is, are we parking enough dough to take care of what access to this and betting on sports is going to provide?
Well, what's going to happen is particularly if you end up where you can just tap into your phone and make a sports bet. Again, you're going to have to register at Twin River, you're going to have an app, et cetera. But that's going to really make it easy for people to engage in sports betting. My concern is the easier that you make it, okay, the more potential you have for problem gambling. And that we've seen problem gambling erupt across New England. There was a fair amount in Connecticut when the casinos started there. And we've seen pockets of it, but across the country, you start to, and especially with sports betting now, you run the risk of having a significant increase in problem gambling.
You gave me a lot of data last time that you were here. Just highlight, a quick highlight of data that you've researched and what you project could happen here.
Well,
you said that there's a number we should be parking in the budget, and we're so far short of that, right?
So far, yes. And
for problem gambling.
Now let me just and I sent you a paper that we had looked at some different aspects in terms of funds spent on problem gambling. Last time I was here, Rhode Island had spent about $150,000. That has increased for 2017, that went up by about 100,000. So that's a good move, but it's nowhere near what's recommended by the National Council on Problem Gambling, which is 1% of the gambling revenue. Okay, which right now it's less than 0.1% nationally of the gambling revenue, and that's the way it is in Rhode Island as well.
Are they objective, or are they just trying to pad the need?
No, I don't think. I think that's a good number, because the more gambling that you have, the more you need to outreach. And last time I was here, I was talking about, and especially when you start talking about sports gambling, I think you need to be reaching down into the schools and making that part of a financial literacy program. I'm an accounting professor. I like students, even high school graduates, to have a good dose of financial literacy.
Well, forget the gaming. I mean, the financial literacy is at an all-time low right now, isn't it?
And that's a big problem. But in terms of potentially ruining somebody's life, if you get hooked on gambling, okay, you can head down a very nasty path, and tragedy can result. And to the extent that we can prevent that tragedy, it's incumbent on us and any state that's going to have casinos, sports betting, to engage in that effort to try to minimize any tragedies that could happen.
A couple of quick hits. Do you believe that this is a different form of gaming at its core than what we had prior? Is sports gaming in itself a different form?
A little bit. I think.
You're not a lawyer.
No, I'm not a lawyer. And so, in terms of the whole constitutional piece of this, I'll let the lawyers.
Okay, fine. Do you believe that the Senate President's discussion on the package there, that it's not a change of gaming, it makes it easier,
I think you had a change of gaming when you went to sports betting.
Period. So
And
you think the idea that you can register at Twin River, but still anywhere within the boundaries of Rhode Island from your home, go ahead and just bet into whatever is happening. You see that all as an extension of the same concept.
Yes, and I'm a big proponent of give the voters a say. Massachusetts did it for every casino that they started up there. They went to the local.
Now you are talking about the constitutional aspect, though.
Yes, but in terms of,
do you think this has changed whether the voters should weigh in or not?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the sports gaming decision by the legislature is one thing, but adding this, you want to vote.
Even the sports betting, I would have called for a vote.
All right. So
and that, to the extent that that's linked to that, because you give the people, to the extent that you're going to have something bringing into your state with potential problems, you need to let people have a say, because they're going to have to. If my recommendation is to fund problem gambling prevention and treatment programs, it's going to cost you something to do that. Okay, you need to understand that going into this.
All right. When we come back, we'll ask Pat why this is not just a do-gooder type of speech that he's making about the economic impact. Stay with us. Here's a copy of a educational article. What do you call that? That's a paper that you wrote.
Yes, it's a paper that was published in Accounting in the Public Interest. It's an academic journal.
Widely read.
And so.
But in the profession, it certainly is.
And with academics, and it's my hope that by getting it published in that journal, it'll provide another platform for people to start thinking about this issue.
In this article, amongst the things that you suggest is that the states are all over the place in terms of their takes in sports gambling. Rhode Island.
And this is casino gambling.
Or casino gaming.
But even Rhode Island.
Rhode Island's got a good piece of casino gaming.
Yes.
But the sports gaming,
yes,
we have the highest state take in the country.
Yes. And I think Rhode Island, to the extent that Rhode Island says we want this to be a revenue generator, they've gone about it the right way in terms of having a higher rate, in terms of a tax rate for casinos, and in terms of their tax rate for sports betting.
Yeah,
they've done it right.
And frankly, the Super Bowl is an example. I don't really understand all the mechanics, but the book, the Hill Company, took a hit, by the way, they'll get it back, right?
Over time.
They'll get it back.
Yes, over time.
Over time.
Yes.
This thing, though, the ability to go into this thing, and your worry about problem gaming, have you been able to study what the mobilization of sports gaming, it's just brand new, right?
No.
You haven't been able to do the calculations.
Nobody's done.
But your instinct is?
The easier you make it for people to gamble, the more potential you have for problem gambling.
Duh.
And
right?
And the prior research suggests that, for example, the closer you are to a casino, the higher, within 50 miles of a casino, the incidence of pathological and problem gambling doubles.
What happens, okay, so you're Mr. Do-Gooder, and the libertarian out there says things like, well, hey, listen, you know, people do what they want to do. You know, if they make a mistake, they make a mistake. You know, why should we have to pay for their mistake? What is, other than the benevolence of your concern, what is the economic impact of the problem gambling?
Well, the other thing is, what you have to think about, to the extent that you can prevent tragedies for people who, this is a very, very addictive sort of situation. If you get hooked on problem gambling, they've done some medical studies where they look at the rush that people get from problem when they're engaged in gambling is similar to the cocaine addiction rush that they get. And so to the
literal brain change.
Yes, and that's why, you know, in terms of people playing slot machines and people getting in the zone and that sort of thing, you hear about that sort of thing. So I think that the states and the casinos have a responsibility that if you're going to potentially have something that's addictive, that you provide people the support that should they end up with an addictive sort of situation, that you can help them out of it. Because
but
otherwise,
the economic damage is what? Is it provable?
Here's the challenge that you have. If somebody, for example, steals from their workplace, economic damage, and
you've chronicled stories about that.
And they ruin their lives. In some cases, the company that they've stolen from will fire them, rather than prosecute them, because then they end up in the front page of the paper. Okay, so I think the incidence of problem gambling is a bit understated, and the other situation that we have is nobody has enough money to be a long-term problem gambler. Okay, other than Warren Buffett. Okay?
Nobody has enough money to be a long-term problem gambler.
Where you're just because you're going to keep on gambling, you're going to keep on, and if you have whatever cash you have or whatever funds you have, you're going to go through them because you're going to continue to lose.
And the economic impact on the rest of us is what?
That's money that's not going to be going to other forms of entertainment, for example, in Rhode Island. Okay, and so do
you think we're going to get a bump of bad gamblers out there? I mean, problem gamblers that we will see an economic, or is it just going to be a wash, or is it just something that we don't see?
No. Here's what's going to happen. I think is Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island are all going to have sports betting. So therefore, the main people that you're going to be having engaging in sports betting in Rhode Island are going to be Rhode Island residents. Okay. The money that they spend on sports gambling is money that they're not going to be spending someplace else.
Will we be able to statistically identify that, is my question.
Very difficult. It would be very difficult because nobody's going to raise their hands. Oh, I got a problem gambling issue over here.
But will we see it in the registers and the retail performance or anything like that?
It depends on, probably not, because you're looking at across the country less than 10% of the people. But for those 10% and the 5%, it's a huge problem.
All right, we'll stay tuned on this. I can tell you, I've seen how easy this is. It's easy. Be careful. Be right back. I've literally seen an acquaintance of mine use the phone on an overseas software where the bookie pays into the phone so that you can use the phone to pay the bookie or get the money from the bookie, and run 10 bets over the course of a basketball game. So if you've got a credit anywhere and you've got that on your phone, just know it takes some discipline and means to avoid problems. The professor's message about being informed about gaming and sports gaming, I would be taking that advice. You have a great night. We'll follow the Cohen thing and more tomorrow and on the radio at 3 on WPRO.